Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 38 of A Year of Change. As promised, today we're going to start delving into a topic that's going to take us throughout the rest of the week. Mainly focusing on body image. It's different aspects, it's different effects on men and women and kids and everything. So I thought I would sort of start what seems to be a bone of contention with a lot of people. And that's fat shaming. And essentially what this is, as we've all experienced it, is the tendency for people to look at people that look like us and automatically judge them, saying that we're fat because we're lazy, or we smell, or it's because we just don't have any drive. It's just sort of that overall encompassing aspect of an undesirable trait, whether it's psychological or emotional or physical or whatever it is. And for a lot of us, it's sort of permeated everything. We're really the last group of people that people can safely make fun of. The problem is, of course, is that a lot of people have now sort of gone the other way, and they're attacking the people that are doing the fat shaming. And in some aspects, there's that part of you that thinks, good. You don't really want to condone any sort of shaming in any form because all it is bullying when you come right down to it. But when we look at it, in keeping with the theme and the sort of overall attitude that we've had for this channel, shouldn't we feel at least a little bit ashamed as to what we've done with ourselves? The reason we look the way that we look isn't anyone's fault but our own. We have no one to blame. We're adults. We choose what we eat. We choose to not do anything. So there should be at least some aspect of embarrassment when it comes to this. Just like you would be embarrassed if you got too drunk at the office Christmas party, or if you were too loud at a funeral. It's not because you're a bad person, and it's not because other people are justified in it, but there should be something to it that we accept responsibility for it. When people seem to stand up against fat shaming, it seems to be almost militant in that they say that this isn't my fault, you shouldn't be making fun of me, and there are some people that have even gone so far as to say that it should be illegal. Now, ideally, it would be great to live in a world where people accept you for who you are and what you look like doesn't really matter. And that seems to be sort of the stance that people are taking, that they're trying to make societal changes and say this shouldn't even be an issue. People should accept us for who we are. Oh, everyone is beautiful and everything else. It's simply not true. We don't live in that world. The reality is that when people look at you, they judge you, whether it's, in our case, for our weight, whether it's because you have piercings, if it's because you dress weird, no matter what it is, everyone's always judging you. And although you can say it's not fair, there is some aspect of self-responsibility that has to go along with that. For example, when you go in for a job interview, if you go in torn jeans and a dirty shirt and tattoos on your face, you might be the perfect person for that job. It might be exactly what you're trained to do. It might be what you love to do, and you might be the best person in the world at it. But when you're going into a job interview dressed like that and putting forward that appearance, although, yes, ideally, the person should be saying, well, I should judge them on their merits, people don't. And by displaying that, you're showing that you don't care what their judgment of you is. So that's why you don't get the job. The same thing happens with fat people. I can't go to a public place, to a beach, say, and put on a skin-tight Speedo and traipse around the beach and not expect people to stare, because it would be horrible. And although part of you sort of wants to say, no, I should be accepted for what I am, you should, but we just don't live in that world. Society doesn't look at you that way, and they don't look at me that way. When they look at us, they instantly judge us, whether they see us and say, okay, well, obviously you're fat, you're lazy, And we talked about this briefly before, that there are certain jobs that you simply won't get because they look at you and think, no, you're lazy, you're not going to work, which is ridiculous. But it happens. And the reality is that part of how we look and how we conduct ourselves does influence that. So, on one side, yes, it's a bad thing, the fat shaming. I equate it to bullying, in that people shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't look at someone and, I mean, we've all heard the comments, we've all heard people whispering, we've all experienced the stares that people give us. That's never going to change. We've dealt with it for years. We'll continue to deal with it until we do something about it. So complaining and saying that, no, they shouldn't be allowed to do that is ridiculous. It's like saying, no, you shouldn't be allowed to make fun of someone because they're bald. It's ridiculous. Yes, it's cruel. No one's denying that. But to be able to say to someone, you aren't allowed to say that because it hurts someone's feelings, I think is ridiculous. And it's not something that's ever going to change. So, on the one hand, we have that aspect of it. On the other, there is that sense of self-responsibility that we have to say to ourselves, we're the reason we look this way. This is why you're watching these. This is why you've stuck with this for over a month. Because you don't like how you're living your life right now. And whether it's simply a physical thing, or whether it's a health issue, or whether you just sort of want to get out of that emotional rut where you eat for comfort and things like that, you are doing something to change how you feel and how you look and how you react, and you're changing the very core of what's made us the way that we are. And I'm hoping I am too. It's slow going, but it is going. So we do have to take responsibility for that. And in part of that, that's why I say there should be some shame to what we've done to ourselves. I can't look in a mirror and not be ashamed of what I see, because I can't say, oh, well, it's because I've been bedridden for 3 years. I did injure my back years and years and years ago. And every now and then it surges up again. I tweak it or something goes wrong, and I'm usually stuck in bed for a few days. But when it originally happened, I was on my back for, I think, 3 or 4 months, and I couldn't move. And I was still probably half the weight that I am now. So there isn't that excuse. I mean, there are maybe some of you out there that have had something devastating happen, and it has contributed to it. Depression will contribute to it. But we can't hang on to that and say, that's the reason why I'm fat. The reason why we're fat is the same reason that I said at the very first video, is that we eat too much and we do too little. If we ate less and we had more activity in our lives, then we would lose weight. And if you started doing that, then you'll see that that's started to happen. And as we progress, it's going to happen more and more and more. We've started watching what we eat. We've started tracking our foods. We started watching what we drink. We've started watching even the condiments that we put on our food. You've gone for healthier alternatives to potato chips and cookies and cakes and things like that. So my goal here isn't to say that, yes, you should be ashamed. But there is that sense of responsibility that you have to have. But when you look at this, you've been doing this for, at this point, 38 days. That's not something to be ashamed of. You are going out of your way to try to improve your life. You're going out of your way to change yourself for the better, obviously. Change for the sake of change isn't necessarily good. But you're doing something to make yourself better, to improve your quality of life. Whether it's so that you can play with your kids more, or so that you can have more disposable income. Whatever the reason is, you are doing something. And that's something that you should be proud of. Because it is really difficult. People don't really they don't understand how hard it is for us. And this isn't a poor me pity thing. But just like quitting smoking, a non-smoker will certainly say, well, just stop. Like, just don't buy any. It's not that easy. And the same thing with eating, because eating is a little bit different than smoking in that everybody does it every single day. We won't get into the eating disorders yet. That's going to be down the road. But everyone eats every day. And with us, we've gradually adopted such horrible habits that it's endangering our lives. More people die from obesity than they do from malnutrition in the world, which is saying something. considering that the vast majority of the people that are overweight are in North America. But I'm getting off topic here. Sorry. But you have started to do something. And that is something that you should take with you and that will keep you motivated. Because although you're still going to run into those situations where you're going to feel people staring, you're going to hear them whispering, and in some cases, in one of the documentaries that I have in the recommended viewing, there is actually someone yelling out something directly to this woman. You're always going to run into assholes, you're always going to run into bullies, you're always going to run into someone that, because of however their life is going, they need a target, and they're going to latch on to you. That's never changed, and a lot of us have been dealing with it for a very long time. We've sort of grown a tough skin against it. Every now and then, you are going to get someone that's going to say something that's going to cut. And, which is one of my stories down the road as well. The one where I say a very, very bad word. But overall, keep in mind that you are doing something to make yourself feel better and healthier. It doesn't matter, even if it's a superficial thing. If you're only doing this just so that you can say, no, I want to be able to go to a beach and not feel embarrassed. It doesn't matter what your reasons are. You're doing something to improve yourself. And so for people that, that look like me, that go to a gym, which I can't do because it's too embarrassing, even though you have people that are still going to stare and make fun of you and they're going to try to do the fat shaming thing, you are proving to them beyond any reasonable doubt that you are trying to improve yourself. And even if you're not going to a gym, if you're just watching these, if you're tracking your food, even if you've stumbled a few days along the way, even if it's taken you up till now just to sort of get into a groove, it's been a month of you striving to improve yourself. And getting back to my original point, it is difficult. It's not something as simple as just saying, well, I won't eat a donut then. Or when I go out with friends, yes, I'll have a drink and a slice of pizza. These eating habits are so ingrained in who we are, and we've been doing it for so long that a lot of us just eat without thinking. We've all done it where you look down at your plate and you don't remember eating it because at a restaurant, I don't mean you've gone and cooked somewhere and had a memory lapse, but because either you're talking or you're most commonly watching TV, or you're just doing something that's distracting. And as long as there's that constant motion, that constant eating, then we've all done it. Gotten to a point where you realize that you've eaten everything. So it is difficult to sort of change that habit. And that is what it is. I view it as an addiction. Just the same way that you would be addicted to anything else, aside from really hardcore drugs, which we talked about before. But it's the people who have never had an issue like this won't ever really understand it. And it doesn't help to sort of attack them in the same way that they attack us or get defensive because they don't understand. They're never going to get it. So there's no point in arguing with them. All you can do is do your best to try to improve how you are, how you feel, and for most of us, how we look. Now, I should also go back in because this is going to start people commenting. This isn't a matter of saying this is what the standard should be. All right, there is the argument for, the media having an influence on things. We'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow. But the shaming does sort of go the other way when people sort of start getting defensive and saying, no, everybody's beautiful and everyone should be, accepted the way that they are. Unfortunately, people have a very hard time turning that the other way around. And we've all heard it. There's just like people looking at fat people and thinking, okay, well, obviously they're lazy, they're smelly, they're sweaty, they're gross. People look at thin people and do the exact same thing. But generally, it's fat people that do it. And I don't know if it's a matter of being jealous or just being resentful that they know someone who can eat whatever they want and they don't gain weight. Or so they say, but chances are they're eating very little. But you'll hear it all the time. He's a scrawny asshole or she's a skinny bitch. That shaming does go the other way. So before we get up on our soapbox and try to shout to the masses that fat shaming is wrong, keep in mind that we do the exact same thing to thin people, or in some cases, bodybuilders. That you'll hear this from guys an awful lot, that it doesn't matter how good looking a guy is. It's like, oh, well, obviously he's gay, which makes no sense. But it's, again, I think it's sort of a matter of them being jealous. Instead of just saying, I wish I could work towards that and look that way, they just automatically get their defenses up, and women do the exact same thing. I know plenty of women that are overweight, and I know plenty of women that are very skinny. And it goes both ways. So that's something to keep in mind as well. This is why this video is not just titled Fat Shaming, because the pendulum does swing the other way. And it doesn't mean that it's any more acceptable either. As I said before, I view this the same way that I would view bullying. And telling someone something with no purpose other than to hurt them or to make them feel ashamed, or for some reason think that they don't know the information that you're giving them, is cruel. And most times it's perpetrated by someone who is, in my opinion, just a fucking idiot. Because, again, it's like someone yelling at you for no reason. Something has gone wrong in their life and they need a target, they need to vent. We're very easy targets. So that's who they go after. And same thing goes for thin people. We feel justified in attacking someone who's thin or who looks good or who looks the way that we want to look. Because in our head, we think, oh, well, they get everything handed to them. Same thing that people seem to get angry at rich people. And it's the majority of rich people have worked for it. I'm not talking about the idiots that have just sort of sponged off everyone their entire lives. I'm talking about people that have actually worked for it. Again, getting off topic. So, where was I? Yes, the shaming. I view this the same way as bullying. So, no matter if it's coming from us or from thin people or from bodybuilders or whoever it is, I think it's ridiculous. However, I don't think it should get to a point where we tell people that they can't say something. I am also a big believer in the fact that you should be able to make fun of everyone, or else you can't make fun of anyone. And that's part of that. I wouldn't say to someone, you aren't allowed to say that. Because that's the same thing as me imposing my beliefs on someone as them yelling at me. Now, there are some things, obviously, because people are going to start comparing this to racism. Because I tend to sort of talk about these subjects before I do these videos, and inevitably that comes up. This is not the same as racism. We don't have hundreds and hundreds of years of, people attacking us and lynching us to even draw a parallel. This is a matter of someone saying something just to hurt our feelings. All right? There's no danger for us. I mean, later on in the week, we are going to talk about how bad it can be for kids. There are kids that have, unfortunately, committed suicide because of the bullying. So, that can happen. However, as adults, the vast majority of us, yes, our feelings are going to get hurt. But you shouldn't get to a point where you can say to someone, you're not allowed to say that because it hurts my feelings. And this is why I say that, although I don't agree with fat shaming, I don't agree with skinny shaming either, I also don't agree with the fact that we shouldn't feel any shame. Because again, we are the ones responsible for what we've done to ourselves. And not the same sort of shame that you would get from going into work some Monday morning and realizing, oh, I spent the entire weekend being a drunken ass to people. Or, but shame is simply the feeling that you get from acknowledging that you've done something foolish. And it shouldn't be something that gets to us to a point where we just sort of crawl back into our hole and eat ourselves to death, which is what the majority of us do. But like I said before, you should be able to take away from this that you've been following this program now for 38 days. You've been tracking your foods, you're watching what you're eating, you have a goal that you've reached the majority of the time, I hope. And you've gotten to a point where I'm hoping it's starting to become routine. And that's something that you can take away, and that's something that you shouldn't be ashamed of. It's fine to look back at our past behavior and say, even for me, even on Sunday when I went over, and I knew that I was going over, way, way over. And yes, of course, I shouldn't be doing that. It's especially the one that's trying to spearhead this stuff. Of all people, I should be the one to say, no, I stayed on track and, I'm trying to stay motivated for people. It's going to happen. It's okay for me to look back on that or the infamous icing incident that I talked about a few weeks ago and be ashamed of that because I should be. No one should be eating vast amounts of icing. That's the sort of thing that I think if you look back and as long as you do feel some shame, that will prevent you from doing it again. I'm never going to get to a point, I shouldn't say that, but in my head, I don't feel I'll ever get to a point again where I'm just eating icing out of a tub with a spoon. Because not only just from that incident, but because over the past month when we've been doing this, we're making headway. And although some of us may not be losing weight yet, we're feeling different. Maybe you have more energy. Maybe you're just to a point where psychologically it feels better because you're doing something. You're tracking your food and you have a goal. And you're following through with that, and you're following up with it later on. There are many things that we're doing that you should be taking away from this, and saying that you don't need to be ashamed anymore. The past behavior that we've done, yes, it's perfectly legitimate to feel shame from that. It's going to prevent us from going back there. But looking forward, you should have some sense of accomplishment at this stage. You've done quite a bit. And even just following up or following through for a full month is longer than the vast majority of us have done in years and years and years. Usually we go for a couple of days and then it sort of peters off. So take that with you at least from this. And acknowledge the fact that the fat shaming is still going to happen. Skinny shaming is still going to happen. Any behavior that we do that people would consider to be foolish, and let's face it, a lot of our eating habits, myself included, are pretty foolish. That's never going to change. We're still going to have to deal with that. But at least know that you're doing something now that is improving that. You have concrete proof that you're trying to improve your life. Whether it's to do with your weight or your health, or if it's just to get to a stage where you're not overeating, even if you're maintaining, then that's still something. You're doing something to change yourself for the better. So I hope that you at least take that away from this. I know these are very heavy topics and we're going to continue on throughout the week because it's something that, it does affect us very strongly and has for years and years and years. But not to simply end on a positive note and say, well, there, everything's all fixed. But legitimately and sincerely, you should be proud of being able to go through this for 38 days, sticking with it as long as you have, and knowing that you'll be able to continue on because you've made the small changes. We've added fruits and vegetables. We're adding more water. You're tracking everything from your fluids to the amount of ketchup that you're using. Those are huge, huge steps, especially for people that, myself included, have just thought it normal to sit down and eat an entire pizza or more than one in a single sitting. So take that away from this. Hopefully, these are, again, some topics that are going to be downers, but I want you to take away from this that you are doing something and you should be proud of it. So as of right now, I'm going to leave this video here because I'm going to start repeating myself, and I'm hoping to end this on a high note. Otherwise, I'm just going to delve right back into it, and we're all going to be depressed and go after ice cream. So no ice cream. Keep things on track today. You're doing really, really well. Keep things going. Try out different fruits and vegetables throughout the week and see what you like, and add those comments in there as well. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how body image, sort of narrowing it down a little bit. And this is going to be something that's probably going to prompt some comments as well, because it's one of those topics that I can only give my perspective of it, and that is how it affects women. We're going to do one how it affects men as well, but it affects women much, much more. There seems to be much more focus on that. And quite frankly, men are much more shallow than women when it comes to appearance. Don't worry, women have their shallow parts too. We aren't going to get away from that. But I think that the body image aspect of it and that guilt and the striving for the perfect body affects women more than men. It's very rare that you hear about male anorexics, which do exist. However, we'll move on to that throughout the week. But for right now, thank you very much for watching this video. If you did like it, please poke the like button for me. In the meantime, keep yourself warm and fuzzy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.